Hey guys, this is John. I hope you're having a great week. Welcome to round 10 of the Lone Wolf League on Lichess, season 37. There's 2 rounds remaining, including today's round. I've been grinding every week, facing tough opponents. It feels like in each round, pretty much from the start of the league itself, that round 1 game against, who was it, Terror MT, I believe. I can't say that really any of these games have been easy. But here I am on 7.5 out of 9. I'll give you guys a brief update on the standings as usual, and then we'll get into the preparation, followed by the game itself. So there are 3 players on 7.5 out of 9. Pirate of the Frisians, myself, and then Road to Beating Finns, the aptly named Road to Beating Finns. And you might be wondering, there is this player, M. Deverdier, here in the 4th position. It also indicates 7.5 out of 9 for this player. But remember, this is the late join points column, whereas the TOT column is actually the points that will be used for the final standings in this league. And for a more detailed explanation of that, you can check my previous video. I was actually having to get brought up to speed on it myself, what that means, because I've never seen this distinction before. But the TLDR is that M. Deverdier did not play in the first round. They were unpaired. I believe they just decided to join the league after round 1. And the league rules stipulate that in an occasion like that, especially for a higher rated player like M. Deverdier at 24-24, they're not going to get penalized in the pairings for not playing that first game. So they do get a full point for that unplayed game. But in the actual overall standings, which will matter, in the place determination for the league, they don't get any points for that. So that's why you see a discrepancy here, 7.5 versus 6.5. For most everyone else, the LJP plus TOT and the TOT are the same, but that indicates that they've been actively playing the entire time. I think if you request a half-point buy, it just counts as a half-point buy for both of those totals. But the unplayed games is a different matter. Okay, so 7.5 out of 9 for Pirate of the Frisians, myself, and Road to Beating Finns. And then we have Antazi 8 at 7 points. Interestingly, the only player on 7.5 out of 9. That was the player that I beat in round 9 last week. And then there are a bunch of players on 6.5, including M. Deverdier. So I mentioned a couple rounds ago that I thought I pretty much had to go perfect for the rest of the games, the rest of the rounds, in order to tie for first or win this league outright. And I've been doing a good job of that the past few rounds. I did give up a draw against Faznaz 83 in round 7, but I've won my last 2 games. And this week, I have the white pieces against, drum roll, not Road to Beating Finns. Sorry to disappoint you guys. That pairing may have to be delayed. I have a feeling we might meet next week. But I'm playing M. Deverdier. Okay, so that player I was explaining the situation with the point total with, I'm playing this player at 24-24. Now, interestingly, this is actually a FIDE rated, or a FIDE titled player, I should say. So this is a FIDE master. More about that in the preparation. So a cool crossover here, kind of someone like myself who has a lot of experience over the board and is now competing in the Lone Wolf League on Lichess. So tough pairing. I have the white pieces. I would love to score and get the full point in this game, but we'll have to see what happens. All right. And Road to Beating Finns, by the way, is playing Antazi 8. So my opponent from the previous week. Pirate of the Frisians, I should just add, before we wrap this up, I believe this player has a bye in round 10. And then I think I saw in the Slack channel for the league that they're taking a bye in round 11 as well. So quite a number of buys, which is fine. That's one thing this league is very accommodating for. This is unrated. We're competing for first place, but this is ultimately a semi-competitive league in the sense that there's no money or anything huge at stake. So for all intents and purposes, I believe we can assume that Pirate of the Frisians is going to end the league with 8.5 out of 11. So that's just a little twist thrown in there. And that's also why I think it's quite likely I'm going to play Road to Beating Finns in round 11. Maybe regardless of what happens in the present game against M. Deverdier. Although I guess Maybe I can't speak too soon. If I happen to lose this game, maybe I won't play Road to Beating Finns, and also remains to be seen how they do against Antazi. But somehow I feel the stars may align, and it would be very fitting, right, if I did play Road to Beating Finns. But okay, enough about the standings and these hypotheticals. Let's get into Game 10 of the Lone Wolf League, Season 37, 30 plus 30 chess. That's a mouthful. Let's get into my preparation and then the game itself. Thanks so much for watching these videos, guys. It means a lot to me. I've been getting a lot of nice messages. Glad you guys appreciate these long games. So let's roll the tape, see what happens this week. Okay, here's my opponent for this week. Big matchup. I'm playing Michael Deverdier. I think that's how you pronounce it. A FIDE master. So I speculated that there might be some title players in this league, and indeed, this is the first, I think, verified title player that I've encountered. It's possible I played an anonymous title player or two before, but yeah, very legitimate player here. FIDE 2298, I believe. Interestingly, I did check this player's FIDE profile because I was just curious to see how active they were. Kind of like myself, they haven't played over-the-board classical tournaments in several years. I've been inactive since about 2019 when it comes to classical chess, and that was pretty much around the same time period that this player stopped playing over-the-board chess. So maybe we're in sort of similar positions in our over-the-board career as of now. Still trying to stay active, playing this league, still trying to push ourselves, but not playing super competitively as much. So I think this player peaked FIDE-wise close to 2,400. I want to say 2,386, I think I saw on their FIDE profile. I don't know anything about them otherwise. Again, it was tempting to actually pull up my chess base and look at their previous tournament games, but I refrained from doing that. And I've got less than 25 minutes here to prepare. It's currently 1:36 p.m., and the game is at the top of the hour for me at 2 p.m. So let's get into it and see what we can expect. I do have the white pieces. I'm going to click into this player's classical games. A lot of games on this profile, so that should give me ample ammunition to at least try to anticipate what's going to happen. So here's one of their games, I presume, in the league against Past Knight. Caro-Kann. And a lot of times when I'm looking at these games, I've mentioned this before, but I'm not even actively playing e4 much as white, but I just want to get a sense for how this player plays. So I'm trying to pick up any tendencies, any information, any moments, moves that kind of stick out at me. So yeah, it looks like black was just much better here, and white ended up resigning, because they dropped a knight. And yeah, black played very fast, so it didn't seem to be under really any strain, and won very easily based on a blunder. White's position wasn't great, but they ended up blundering. Okay. Let's see what else. Here's a game against Omega Pen, where Deverdier faced the English and played e6 followed by d5. Very sensible. Possible hanging pawn type formation. Yeah, I would play a lot of these same moves. I know I'm going super duper fast, but I can just tell by the flow of the play that this is a pretty solid player. Not a surprise given their rating. What about his white? What does this player do? Okay, knight f3 followed by c4. Yeah, I mean, I play a lot of this type of stuff too. Another great position by white, pretty much winning right out of the opening. This was a 15 plus 15 game. Here's a 45-45. Beat Barbie. I recognize this player. I think this player is playing in the Lone Wolf League, although this might have been part of the 45 plus 45 league officially. Deverdier played a French. Yeah, I would suspect if I want to get a conventional strategic opening, I can. It seems like this player is very much open to that. Another pretty clean game from the looks of it. 96% accuracy, playing reasonably quickly. Here's a game they played against Banana Monkey. That's one of my opponents. I think I played this player in round 2, maybe. Okay. De Verdier played like a Kali system, Cole system. Sort of a semi-Slav-esque setup. And then knight takes d5, very well spotted, hitting the bishop, because if bishop takes d2, there's knight takes f6 in between move. This could be a stylistic matchup, guys. Players with two similar styles, myself and FM de Verdier. That's what I'm feeling so far after a few minutes of prep. Let's try to drill down, though, a little more closely. So I want to pull up a game. Yeah, how about this game? This will do. This is from a month ago. And let's click into my opponent's actual database. As black. There we go. Okay, so, I mostly played d4 or knight f3 on move 1 as white, but I'm capable of playing c4. You saw me do that in, for example, the first game against Terror MT. I play some e4 selectively, so I'm capable of playing all of the 4 main moves, but mostly I try to play d4 or knight f3. I feel most comfortable with those, so wow, yeah, a lot of games to work with here. Now, probably a lot of these are blitz bullet games. So d4, knight f6, c4. Okay, and plays d6 quite a bit, actually. Interesting. So I played a d6-based setup in my previous round. Sometimes King's Indian players play this way to threaten, so to speak, e5, or at least hint at e5, and maybe try to get white to commit to knight f3, which rules out some setups that black might otherwise go for. But it doesn't look like de Verdier is one of those players. He plays bishop f5 here a lot. Okay, yeah, I haven't encountered this too much. I know this move is legit. It's a bit better for white, but nothing crazy. How do most of his games go on this line? Knight c3, now g6 or c6. Yeah, I mean, g3 looks pretty reasonable, but I also think knight h4, chasing the bishop, makes a lot of sense. Plays bishop d7 a lot to keep it. e4, probably e5. Yeah. Knight back to f3. Queen c7, and then you get one of these sort of setups. Bishop e2, g6. And this looks a little wonky for black. The computer instantly spits out c5 here as a good move, trying to break up black's pawns. And how does that work? If pawn takes d4, probably queen takes d4. And black has a hard time keeping both d6 and f6 stable. Yeah, so I would not mind this variation, I think. Not because of the line that I showed, but I think I'll have multiple paths to a decent position out of this. So if we specifically get this move order, I think I would be pretty happy about that. What about knight f3? Yeah, it tends to play this bishop f5. There is also bishop g4, I know. Yeah, e3, queen b3. Queen b3, maybe there's some sort of knight c6. Queen c8 he's played. And this is just kind of a game. He actually blundered in this one and then resigned because of takes and takes. This is probably a fairly fast game. Yeah, blitz game. I don't know. Hard to say if this player will do this. I kind of think, given where we're at in the league, this is a crucial game, that he might be more likely to go for e6 rather than d6. But it is interesting that he's played a lot of d6 and has done so pretty recently, too. So it won't be out of the question to go for something like this. So let's see again. Knight c3. What if e5? Yeah, so that's, I think, a reason not to play knight c3 in this exact position, e5. Because a lot of these queenless middle games, I mentioned this last week, these queenless middle games tend to be okay for black, even if black can't play f6 to support the e5 pawn. I don't see much here for white, so I probably wouldn't go for that. I like the look of this knight f3 move. And if he happens to play g6 and we get a King's Indian, great. Doesn't look like he ever does that, though. So bishop f5, knight c3, and now seems to like c6 a lot. But if g6, knight h4, Bishop d7, e4. So this seems to be a pattern. Trying to get in e4 after kicking the bishop away. e5, knight back to f3. And if knight c6, you can probably play d5 and take the center. This does look like a King's Indian a little bit. c5, okay. Yeah, I could play this. I like the look of that position. What if bishop g4? D takes would be the obvious move here. And so on bishop takes f3, queen takes f3. If pawn takes e5, I wonder if bishop g5 is already big trouble for black. Kind of looks like it. Bishop e7, take, rook d1, and knight d5 is coming in. What if, yeah, bishop g7, knight d5, knight bd7, and then rook d1. Simply rook d1. Not castles, huh? Castles is inferior. Probably because the bishop gets taken with check at some point. So you play this, you set up takes, and in the event of a line like this, if you were castled, black could meet rook takes d7 with bishop takes g5 check. But here, rook takes d7 works cleanly. Nice. Very interesting. So there's a couple instances there. They're very small, but a couple instances where black got a really bad, if not losing position, almost straight out of the opening. I mean, the engine says this is +2 if black plays bishop g4. Now, I got to be aware this has been played 3 times in his games, but not for several years now. I'm recording this in 2025, so I'm not optimistic something like this is going to happen, but d4, knight f6, c4, d6, knight f3. If history repeats itself, it kind of looks like I might get a decent chance for an advantage. So bishop f5, knight c3, and whether c6 or g6 is played, I think I want to go knight h4. So let's say this line, because he has a lot of games with this too. If bishop c4, e4, e5, probably knight back to f3. Yeah, I mean, this looks standard. I'm not under the illusion I'm going to win out of the opening in any of these lines, but I wouldn't mind this sort of thing. Bishop g4, d5, c5. Yeah, nice position. Knight h4. Castles looks normal too. Let's say knight h4. And we get a trade, something like this. What if g6? Engine wants to go ahead and play f4. I think you could also slow play this. Something along these lines. Try to work up to f4. This also looks very comfortable. Okay, so I feel pretty good if black goes d6. I could try to prepare a little more for this. But I think, again, it's unlikely I'm going to get exactly what I'm looking for. And I kind of don't think he's going to play this way. I have a feeling he's going to be a little more solid and play e6, which is the Nimzo Indian invitation. Knight c3, bishop b4. Just curious what he does here. I had a game in the league where I played queen b3, but I didn't get anything. Yeah, he's played this recently. He'll surely have seen that game. I'm not going to repeat that line with queen b3. I'm not really feeling knight c3 either. I might just go knight f3. And he does a lot of stuff here. d5, bishop b4, h6, b6. There's even bishop f4 people are playing these days. There's one game with that. Let's see how that one went. I've never played bishop f4, so this would, in theory, be a bit of a surprise. Yeah, just normal Queen's Gambit decline type stuff. Yeah, he looks very solid. I have a feeling this is probably what he's going to do, and he looks solid. So I think it would make sense for him to play this versus the knight f6, d6 stuff. I don't see the risk-reward really being worth it for him there. So I'm going to proceed under the assumption that this is what we're going to get. This makes it hard to prepare, though, when he has 4 different moves that he plays here. d5 certainly being a tough one to crack. What does he do against Catalan? Also plays a lot of stuff. Yeah, he mixes his repertoire pretty well. And then has a lot of games with d takes c4. D takes c4. This can get rather sharp at times. Yeah, bishop takes c4, knight takes e4, and then I think castles is the move. He always takes here. I think you can also go back to b6. And then you don't take, because I guess after rook b1, white gets quite a bit of compensation. I don't really know how this goes, though. He has several games with this position. 95 castles. Yeah, I'm not going to go for something like this. Too sharp. I mean, I'd probably go for e3 if I had this position on site, but I'm also not under the illusion that this is going to get me much. This is a Queen's Gambit accepted transposition that should be fine for black. Yeah, so I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do against knight f6, e6. This is always a conundrum for a d4 player if you play d4, c4. I wonder, could I play knight f3 on move 2 and just wait and see what he does? Because if he plays d6, then I can duck back into c4. But if he plays e6, I have a few more options, having withheld the c4 move. But here, too, it's not like there's anything truly earth-shattering. I mean, maybe I could play something like this. Take the space. Seems to like d5 in this type of position. I have played this before successfully. Though he is a French player, so he wouldn't probably mind a setup like this. Just trying to be mindful of my time because there's about 10 minutes before we're playing this game. Yeah, this isn't too inspiring either. h6. What if bishop h4? Again, he plays different stuff. b6, c5. c5. Let's say c3 here. Now b6. e3. Bishop b7. Yeah, this is a pretty bog standard position for this line, but I kind of like this more than some of the QGD stuff. I feel like I might be able to do something with this versus those other lines. A little more free-flowing. Probably will surprise him a bit. Let's see how the masters play this position. Just click into a game where white won out of this. a4, grab some space. e1. Yeah, often when black takes on d4, you take with the e-pawn in this line. Yeah, this is all equal, but I do feel pretty comfortable with this type of setup. I know a3 followed by b4 is also a plan. Let's see. Queen e2, knight h5, take, knight e5, f4. Yeah, all just equalish stuff. I mean, it must be said, a draw is not a disaster for me. Of course, I'm going to try to win, but I don't have to go all out to win. I've given myself a little margin in these remaining couple of rounds. Yeah, so I could play this way. Bishop g5, this sort of pseudo, I guess it is a Tory attack. Just trying to rack my brain if there's anything else move order-wise. I mean, could I start with knight f3, withhold c4 and d4? What does he do against this? Because I think the danger here, the fear here, that he would just be playing d5. Oh, sorry, this actually flipped around to him as white. I always do that. So what does he do against knight f3? Plays knight f6. So I could play it this way, because if d6, I can still duck back into what I want to do with d4. Yeah, and if e6, which he doesn't play too often, here too I have a few more options. Like, let's see how this game went. Yeah, this sort of thing I like playing a bit more. This was just a blitz game that he played, but maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I should start with knight f3, and if knight f6 plays c4, there's a chance he plays d5, though, whereupon, I mean, I can try to keep this in independent territory, but it's going to be tough. Knight d7, what if d4 here? Knight b6, this looks interesting. Bishop g2, bishop f5. He likes these early bishop f5 situations. c6. Okay. I don't know a whole lot about this. I've seen this line before, knight d7, knight b6, but I'm not too familiar with it. What has Rapport done? How does Richard Rapport play this? Goes for the bishop. Yeah, I'd much rather play against a line where black plays an early bishop f5. That looks more my speed. Wouldn't mind that. So there's some stuff in this type of setup. Interesting. I'm surely not going to be able to get up to speed with it right away, but there are some wrinkles here. Huh. Knight a4, because if takes, queen a3. This is all equal according to the computer. So this knight b6 move, it controls the c4 square. How has Magnus played this? Also goes for a quick knight h4. Yeah, Magnus played this pretty sensibly. Kind of like what he did here. Didn't put the knight on c3 in front of the c-pawn. Played b3 to restrict the knight. Worked up to c4. Eventually took on d5 and had some pressure in an opposite color position, bishop position. Okay. I'm running out of time here, so this is getting to the stage where I need to make a decision. But I think I might go for knight f3 and try to duck back into some lines that might be more conducive to playing for an edge. So if d5, I probably won't play d4. I'll probably play g3. And who knows what he'll do. He might repeat this. Here I'll play d4, knight b6. Yeah, and I kind of like the move Magnus played, this b3 move. He does have one game with this. Yeah, white got the bishop pair. Something where I can play chess and have a little bit of freedom to work with. So that looks okay. And then if we proceed down lines like this, yeah, g3, this is very much mainline stuff. He has a ton of games here. Ah, he plays the double fianchetto. Okay. Yeah, interesting. I have faced this before. There is quite a bit of theory here as well. Wu Xiangzi, he's a player I always like to check out. d4. Yeah, this will be another just play chess type position if we get this. But b3, try to set up a fianchetto opposite black's fianchetto. Has he had this position before? He has. d4, one game he took, and then queen takes d4, d6 is a hedgehog type setup. Knight c3, knight bd7. Yeah, I could work with this. I've played these types of positions many, many times. Again, not under the illusion that I'm going to get much out of this, but I could work with this. So maybe we'll get something along these lines. d6, d4. Yeah, I'd be cool with this too. Okay, so I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to open with knight f3, try to duck back into these d6 lines, maybe hope for a bishop f5. I think he's going to play it more solid, maybe along the lines that we just saw here. So this type of thing with the double fianchetto, this is tough to crack. And in my preparation time, I'm not going to refute this. Not even going to try. So maybe I'll get something along the lines of what we're looking at here in this Wu Xiangzi game. But we'll see. So yeah, I'm going to try to press. But if I have to, at some point, just play to equalize or be okay with a drawish type of game, let's not lose sleep over that as well. Okay, that's my prep. Now let's see what happens in the game. Tough opponent coming up here. A FIDE Master. Round 10 of the Lone Wolf League. Let's go. All right, let's tell our opponent good luck. Have fun, as always. Let's start things off here. Knight f3 on move 1, as planned. Took me a while to figure out what I'm going to do, and I really don't have a clear read on what to expect. But let's enjoy a 30+30 game of chess against Michael Deverdier, FIDE Master. Okay, my screen capture looks good. Everything firing. Okay, and he plays c5 on move 1. Not a move I prepared for. Now, a lot of times I play c3 here. A lot of times I play c3. I don't recall seeing any Slavs or exchange Slavs in his preparation, but I'm already thinking he knows that I play c3, or well, I've seen that in the database. So what is he considering doing? Does he really want to play the black side of an exchange Slav after c3, d5, d4, and we get a swap? That might be a good choice for me because I have a lot of experience in that line, and if I want to play with a draw in hand, I can do that in theory. But also, maybe he's going to try to duck back into some e6 type thing. I think that's more likely. So I also play a lot of c4 here. That would be the principled move, play an English type setup. I think I'm a little more inclined to do that because if I play c3 and he doesn't go d5, plays something like c3, knight f6, d4, e6, I do think it's going to be tough to get a whole lot out of that. I could also think about g3, but then it allows black to take the center with d5. I'm not sure I'm thrilled to play that way, so let's go ahead and play c4. I'm drinking my dark roast from Starbucks. Been working on this. I'm playing this game at 2 o'clock local time for me, 2 o'clock p.m. Okay, knight f6. Yeah, I usually play knight c3 here. Just debating, again, if he has any sort of move order plots up his sleeve. But we might end up seeing a fianchetto type thing somehow. One or both black bishops being fianchettoed. I would not doubt that. So I can play knight c3 or g3. Not going to be a whole lot of difference here, unless black wants to go d5 for some reason. Kind of doubt he does that, though. So I'm leaning towards g3. Leaning towards a slight surprise, but one that's within my wheelhouse for my repertoire. And seeing what he does. Because if he plays e6 and works up to d5, I'd be okay with a Tarrasch type situation, take on d5 and then play d4 later. So yeah, let's play g3 and see what he does. Just always paranoid. I mentioned this before that I forget to hit the record button. So if I look this way, it's just to make sure the recording's all good. Okay, plays b6. Yeah, so we might have something along the lines of that game I was preparing right towards the end, that Bu Xiangzi game. So let's play bishop g2, expecting bishop b7. We might get a quadruple fianchetto, guys. I'm going to go ahead and castle. And let's see if he goes g6. That would be very characteristic of how he's played in the database. Possible quadruple fianchetto coming. I could also on g6 play d4. I have some experience with that too. Pawn takes d4, you take with the queen. You don't take with the knight and allow a trade of bishops. So I could go for that. Yeah, I played that over the board a couple times. It's not much for white. And a lot of the ideas are going to be familiar to him. But g6, b3 somehow feels right for today. I could also go for g6, knight c3, bishop g7, rook e1, try to work up to e4. I think he'd probably play knight e4 against that, though. That seems likely. So let's pause for just a moment. So b3, d4, knight c3, those are all candidate moves. So if I play d4, c takes d4, queen takes d4, my dark square bishop has a little more freedom. I could, in theory, play it to g5 at some point. But that can be hard to arrange sometimes when black has h6 available. There's some move order nuances there that are a little hard to appreciate. Like black can play d6, knight bd7, a6. They can delay castling until white reveals whether they're going to play bishop g5 or not. So I don't know if I'm quite feeling that. Yeah, I'm going to play b3. Let's go for this quadruple fianchetto. Let's see if we can milk something out of this. Bishop b2. Now I expect black to castle. And then I can play d4 and try to unbalance the game a little bit. So d4, pawn takes d4, queen takes d4. You're not afraid of knight e4 because that loses on the spot to queen takes g7, by the way. That must be said. So d4, pawn takes, queen takes. If knight c6, I think you have good options with either retreating the queen back down the d file, like queen d2, for instance, maybe even queen h4. So I think d4, c takes d4, queen takes d4, d6 is likely. And then knight c3, knight bd7, and that's where I think I was showing rook fd1. Black does have knight e4 in those types of positions, but I think white's a bit better if you go, for example, queen e3, even after a trade or two on c3. White should be a tiny, tiny bit better. So yeah, let's play d4. Not think about it too much. By the way, I think this opponent's repertoire is ideal for what you want to have if you're a strong player in the modern landscape, in the modern chess landscape. He varies his openings quite a bit. So he did have some tendencies, but if you noticed, within certain systems, he often played 2, 3, 4 different moves. It's very hard to prepare for an opponent like that, where he has a few different overall type of lines he might play, but within those lines, there's also some freedom, and he's displayed many flexible tendencies, let's say. Hard to prepare for opponents like that, and I think that is the ideal style in 2025 and beyond. The players who tend to stick to the same openings and just religiously play the same lines, think Maxime Vachier-Lagrave a few years ago. I think he's varying his openings now, but he was always known for playing the Najdorf, for instance, as black. Those opponents, you really got to know what you're doing, suffice it to say. If you play that way, just sticking to one particular line. And I think it's a suboptimal style in this day and age. Very few people can pull that off. So far, I'm relatively happy. I haven't had to invest a huge amount of time, nor was I really expecting to. This opponent doesn't play lots of sharp lines right out of the gate. So most of my preparation was dedicated to, hey, how do I get something kind of flexible with free-flowing play, maybe a space advantage, maybe something where I can get the bishop pair. How do I work with that? Okay, so knight c3. Now we put the knight in front of the bishop. We could try to keep the queen and the bishop together, but I don't think it's going to lead to much. So I do remember, I think they had a game in the database, knight c3, knight bd7, maybe rook ac1, rook c8. And I remember white played knight d5 somewhere, which I was saying, or maybe I didn't say it, but usually you don't want to rush knight d5 in this type of position. So let's play knight c3. I'm expecting knight bd7. Again, it's tempting to move this knight in discovery, but I don't think black's going to do that. They're just going to continue developing. Oh yeah, I didn't complete my drink check. So I've got my dark roast from Starbucks. I've got my lemon ginger tea with the water heated up in the microwave. I apologize. I actually broke my rule with preparation. I prepared almost up to the game, which I've said before is usually a bad idea. So I'm a little rushed for time today. This is a do as I say, not as I do type moment, but ideally I would have left myself 5 to 10 minutes or more. So had to quickly throw the cup of water in the microwave. I apologize. I will try to get an electric kettle at some point to appease you guys. Some of you have actually offered to send me an electric kettle, which is very kind. I think I actually own one, but it's buried somewhere in my cabinets. So yeah, I've got those 2 beverages, and then I've got my water, as usual. Maybe I should get some totally off-the-wall beverage. Like maybe I should drink like a Soylent or something on stream for my final game in round 11, just to really throw you guys a curveball. So black taking a little time here, but I do expect knight bd7. Oh, but no, knight e4, going for potential simplifications. Okay, so interesting. Yeah, I was under the impression that black does not want to do this. But it's not going to be something that swings the evaluation much, if at all. And you might even say, hey, isn't black lacking a little space? Aren't trades good for them? Which you could make an argument for that. But I think eliminating this dark square bishop around black's king might be handy for me. So the question is, where do I put my queen? Because my queen's hit. You always got to look at queen takes g7 in this type of position, but my play is going to sputter out after I get the discovered check. And I only have 2 pieces for the queen. So we're going to retreat the queen. Question is where. I mentioned queen e3, but I wonder if I might want to play the queen to a different square. Queen d3 is another option, but I think queen e3 is what I should do. Even if black's not interested in taking my knight right away, I still think that's the best square. Leaves the d file open. I'm staying away from, for instance, if I go queen d3, I'm staying away from stuff like knight d7, knight c5. So yeah, let's play this move. And we'll see if black wants to swap, or if they want to delay, or I think there's a decent chance they'll want to delay and play knight d7. In which case, I could think about knight d4. Yeah, knight d4 actually might be asking for trouble. So black does swap, and I guess we're going to get a big old trade. And only now, knight d7 maybe? Is it time? Is it time? So I do like my queen positioned here, making black's king a little bit uncomfortable. That seems nice. Maybe in some universe I could consider playing the queen to h6 and knight g5. Black's not going to allow that, though. I think more likely I'm going to want to play on the queen side. So stuff like b4, a4, a5, try to push on that wing. Maybe I can try to push in the center, like rook e1, e4. Could throw an h4 somewhere, but I don't think it does a whole lot. Let's say if black plays knight f6. I mean, this position looks very reasonable for black. But I still think I might be able to work with a little something out of this. Do I try to prepare e4 even? Try to play rook e1, go for e4. So rook e1, maybe black will play knight f6. But I can still try to prepare e4. I can play, for example, queen d4, centralize. Or queen d3 even. Then that invites bishop e4, I suppose. I don't want to move my knight and just allow a trade of bishops. That's pretty accommodating. Maybe I would consider that if I could do something like I did in one of the prior Lone Wolf games where I can install the knight on c6. But I can't bank on that scenario. I think that's unlikely in the short term, but something I can keep in mind. So we're in a flexible position, which is sort of what I wanted. But the burden of flexible positions is, by the nature of them, you have a lot of options you can consider. So plenty of time still, but I don't want to start spending 10 minutes on my next couple of moves. Let's try to find something in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, knight d4, I know I said I don't want to trade bishops, but I'm looking at that c6 square. Feels early. Like, I don't think I want to do this quite yet, but it does enable f4 in some instances. Maybe I could play rook e1 first and then knight d4, assuming black plays knight f6. That's an option. I want to advance my pawns and try to grab space, try to impose some will on the position. So rook e1 does fit the bill. I mean, a4 as well, a4, a5. I'm not sure how much that achieves, and black might just play a5 themselves. Is the thing there. So rook e1 somehow feels like a good way to start. Just see where black commits their pieces. So rook e1, let's say knight f6. Then maybe queen d4, but d5 could be a thing. Maybe I have to play rook to d1 first. Try to discourage that a bit. Yeah, let's play rook e1. I'm going to go for this. And I'm trying to be mindful of the clock before it becomes an issue. I know we have plenty of time, but I don't think I'm going to arrive. I don't think I'm going to have some epiphany moment in this position about which move to start with. So let's just play a sensible move that at least makes black think about e4. So trying to grab space, trying to force black to commit their pieces, perhaps somewhere a little less flexibly. Like if black plays knight f6, at least then I know that the knight is not coming to c5 imminently. So maybe it makes something like a4 a little more compelling. Who knows? There will still be knight e4 and potentially knight c5. So you can't have everything, but we'll see. Maybe there's even some instances where the rook could be handy down the e-file. If ever that e-file opens up and I have that rook shooting down towards that pawn on e7. I was just thinking some scenario like knight f6, knight d4, bishop takes g2, king takes g2. Let's say queen c7, knight b5, queen b7 check, queen f3, queen takes f3, e takes f3, where I'd be threatening rook takes e7, and if black played rook f to e8, they would run into knight c7. That's a long calculation, but just as an example. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy about all this because this is my type of position. It may not look like much, but I feel very comfortable out of this sort of thing. So rook c8, yeah, that did cross my mind as something black might play. Because the thing about this move is black might be in a position to play b5. So I have to be wary of this alignment with my queen. So if I play e4, b5, black can look to take on c4. I may not want to allow that. So I'm thinking queen d4 is perhaps what I should do here. Centralize. That also props up the e4 move, so I might get e4 in. Let's say queen d4, queen c7, e4, maybe queen c5. But I feel like getting e4 in is an achievement. I mean, maybe bishop h3 starts to become an option as well. I feel like that's a minor achievement for me. And from d4, I still get to peer into the black king side. So I like that. Queen d2 might be an option as well to hint at queen h6. That's interesting too, actually, because it might compel black to play king g7 if they're concerned about that. And then I could get e4 in sort of with tempo, having induced king g7. Yeah, I like the look of that too. So I would somehow doubt that black wants to allow queen h6. Like, let's say queen d2. They could play rook c5, which is a theme in this line, trying to get the rook active along the 5th rank, intending to meet queen h6 with rook h5. But on rook c5, I can play e4, and I might stick the knight on d4. Very possibly. Yeah, and if I keep the queen off of d4, and then I play e4, knight d4 is a possibility versus the logjam that I otherwise might experience. So my instinct was queen d4, but I'm kind of leaning towards queen d2 now. I think that might be even better. Looks compelling. Queen d2. I don't have to worry about d5 stuff. It's just not going to work for black yet. I mean, knight e5, probably not great for black. Yeah, let's go queen d2. Step off the file, hint at queen h6. I am abandoning the beautiful a1, h8 diagonal for now. But I figure I can always hop back on that diagonal if I want. If black goes king g7, I can always swing my queen over to that diagonal again. But I'm just very curious how black's going to think about the queen h6 move. I think king g7 or rook c5, one of those two moves is very, very likely. Maybe knight f6, but that does allow queen to h6 anyways, and maybe black could play knight g4, queen h4, knight back to f6, but that somehow looks a little dangerous for them. Thanks to everyone watching this game. We have 22 viewers watching live. I think Mennonite is streaming this one, so shout out to Mennonite. He's a viewer also in the league himself, I believe. I've been very fortunate that many of the Lone Wolf regulars and also the 45 plus 45 regulars have taken an interest in my games each week. And I think for every round, there's been someone streaming coverage of it live, which is really cool for me too. I get to go back and look at the VOD and compare what the commentators were analyzing or thinking about to what I did and what I was considering during the game. So king g7, I'll probably play e4. And rook c5, I'll probably also play e4. I would be surprised if black didn't play one of those two moves. There's an off chance they might come up with something else, but I would be surprised. I think if this were a bullet game, let's say, black would definitely play king g7, just to not have to think about queen h6. I know the engines in these types of positions, these hedgehog-style formations, they love grabbing space with the pawns. So maybe that's why I'm biasing towards some plan involving e4. I mean, this is known from human play as well. Of course, like you want to try to advance with your pawns and grab space in these closed, semi-closed positions. But the engines really, really like that stuff. Yeah, and black does play rook c5. So again, this is a thing because black can meet queen h6 with rook h5 and boot my queen out. So one thing I could consider in this type of situation is playing g4 to cover h5. But that seems premature. I don't really trust that move. Black could even take my knight. So I'm probably going to go for the e4 move. Probably going to go for that. And I wonder if black's going to put the queen on a8 to attack that pawn. So something like queen a8, knight d4 to defend, knight f6 to add another attacker, maybe then f3. Could happen. Am I going to do anything other than e4? There are b4 things that crossed my mind too, but I think after rook takes c4, queen h6, yeah, knight g5 is kind of a threat, but black can always take the knight, which would be great if I wasn't losing a pawn, but since I have to give up a pawn, I don't really want to allow that. So yeah, I'm thinking e4 here. And then on queen a8, probably knight d4. Probably knight d4. Let's do it, e4. So now we've screened the bishops. It's unlikely there will be a bishop for bishop trade in the next few moves. But even still, even with some traffic between these bishops on the diagonal, there are shots that both sides have to consider, especially e5 at some point, introducing the tension again. I think the other main matchup that influences the standings in this round and going into the final round involve the player named Road to Beating Finns. Shout out to them. So they're on the same score as me. And unfortunately, we didn't get paired in this round. Maybe it'll happen in the final round. But I forgot who Road to Beating Finns is playing, but that's the other main matchup. And I think they play tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're playing on a Saturday. We're currently playing this game on a Friday. So, should be interesting. There's 3 players on 7.5 out of 9, including myself going into today. So we'll see what happens. And I think the player I'm playing, M. Deverdier, technically has 6.5 because of the late join points thing I was explaining. So they have 7.5 points when it comes to the pairings, but officially in the standings, they have 6.5. So no imminent threat for me or anything. E4 doesn't help me play queen h6. Because again, I'm still running into queen h5. I'm probably going to tilt the game back towards the center. But I do just like grabbing this space. I think seizing that space is very nice. Maybe there will be an opportunity to play b4 somewhere as well. I could perhaps work up to that. But if I play rook c1, it's going to be pretty apparent what I'm going for with b4 in order to defend this pawn. So we'll see. Bishop h3 maybe somewhere could come into play. I think that's less relevant now that black has moved their rook from c8. So there's nothing to pin. But maybe bishop h3, given that I do have my pawn on e4 now. I might at some point play that. But more likely I'm going to build up in the center and look to grab more space somehow. Queen a8 looks like a natural move to build this queen-bishop battery, but sometimes it's not good to play that. Sometimes the computer doesn't want black to play queen a8 because the queen can be misplaced. It's a powerful piece, but when she's in the corner, it may be counterproductive. Okay, knight e5. This move crossed my mind, but I didn't take it too seriously because I always thought I might just play knight d4. And what is black doing? I don't know. Knight d4. I don't want to trade knights. I think that's clear. If I trade knights, black probably can even take with the d pawn. That might be a scenario where they're okay with the doubled pawns because they have good control of the dark squares. Even if they took with the rook, though, that's probably fine. So yeah, I probably don't want to take on e5, nor do I want to allow an easy trade of knights. So knight d4 looks very much like an obvious move. In which case I can work up to f4 if I want. Maybe black will try to induce me to play f4 and argue that that's a potentially weakening move. But yeah, I'm a little surprised by knight e5. Because although black is centralizing the knight, it's going to get pushed back at some point. So I'm scanning to see if I'm missing anything, but I don't think so. There's not hardly any tactics going on in this position. Which, as soon as you say that, you again double down. You're like, am I missing something? Because I don't want to let my guard down. But no, I don't see anything for black. Just trying to anticipate how he's going to play against knight d4. Because if knight c6, trying to insist on a knight trade, I can go knight b5. Black isn't going to get in a knight trade if I don't want to allow it. I could play queen h6 again, but queen h6, knight takes f3, bishop takes f3. Even in the absence of rook h5, my queen isn't doing much without the knight's help. So let's go knight d4. Maneuvering, trying to keep some tension. Stands to reason black would think about moving the queen somewhere. I think, again, queen a8 would make sense. a6 might make sense too, if black wants to deny knight b5. a6 could be a little double-edged, though, because black's playing out a little bit late, and they may not want to create a weakness on the queen side just to stop knight b5, because I may or may not even play knight b5. So could be a decision for them whether they even want to prevent that move or not. Oh yeah, you might have noticed I switched the piece set today. Maybe you didn't notice that, but I think I was playing with those very distinctive looking bishops in the prior set, and I had the blue board. I don't know why I was playing with that set. I just was. So I've been using that for the entirety of the series, but I switched to a more conventional board and piece set for today's video. I'm not one of those players who's very particular about the aesthetics of the board and the pieces. I mean, okay, I have some preferences, but some people are very sensitive to that, I've noticed. But I can't say that I'm one of them. Even still, I'm not going to be playing with the Anarchy chess set, or the ones that's like X's and it displays visually like the patterns of the pieces. Those are the pieces themselves. That's an option on Lichess. There's all sorts of wacky. I could click and show you guys, but I don't want to click a wrong button or something. All sorts of options for sets on Lichess. So we're about even on the clock. This is probably the deepest I've got into a game so far in the league, where both sides still have 20 minutes. We are on move 17 now, so definitely in the middle game. But it's not unexpected based on how the game went. We played a line that we were both semi-familiar with and maybe anticipated, and a bunch of trades happened. So, pretty standard stuff so far. And all that said, I'm still relatively happy with this. I don't think this is going to be easy by any means, but I should be a little better here. I think there's a good chance that I continue grabbing space and black just sits tight in the meantime. And we'll see if I can do anything with that. It's hard for black to justify advancing too many pawns because I've already pretty firmly established a presence on the 5th rank, especially controlling d5 and b5. You don't want to go crazy and play some f5 type move generally in these positions. That would be a disaster in the short term because of knight e6, but it's just not really in the spirit for black anyways. Even e6, that'll weaken d6, so that's also a big decision for black to do that. a6 is about the one standard pawn move that black can play, which I've alluded to, and black does play queen a8. But yeah, we'll see. All right, so do I go for f4? Do I grab the space with f4? That would be very consistent, normal thing to do. But at the same time, it feels like black might be baiting me into playing that move. Pawns don't go backwards, so if I play f4, I have to be pretty certain that I can control or keep the e4 pawn under control, keep that safe, which I think I can. I don't think that's an issue, but I just want to highlight that fact. Maybe I could start with rook a to d1 just to stay flexible. Again, black's not really threatening much, so I don't feel I have to commit to f4. I could go for some plan like knight c3, knight b5 to c3 as well, if I want to try to route my knight. That looks interesting too, establish super control over the d5 square and kind of argue that I always have f4. So that does look intriguing. I mean, rook d1 would be such a normal looking move. I'm not sure I really want my rook on d1 though. It might be better off somewhere else. But knight b5, knight c3. Again, I'm sort of borrowing an idea from engine games that I've seen, but it's not bad to at some point have knight d5 available to try to stuff black up. Because if I don't play knight b5 right now, black might play this a6 move. And I could probably still get to c3 later, but it might be a little trickier. Moreover, black might be ready to play b5 somewhere. Which actually must be said, if I play knight b5, a6, knight c3, black could go b5 at that point, perhaps. Yeah, that's an option for them. Pawn takes. Maybe they even play it like a gambit. Rook c8. That could be interesting. So on a6, I might want to play a4. So do I start with rook d1, go from there? Do I play f4 right away? Just not seeing much after f4, knight d7. e5, I don't think is a move I'm ready for. So I'm leaning towards starting with rook d1. Maybe a4? Maybe a4 could make sense. Hint at a5. If I want to keep my rook on the a file just for now. So a4, rook d1. I think those are my top candidate moves. Still trying to be vigilant for tactics. Like, I don't think f5 is going to work anytime soon, but I can't completely dismiss it. I feel like I can always play f4 against that if I need to. Aside from the fact that knight e6 probably works. So is a4 worth considering? It's interesting. a4, a6, a5. Maybe queen back to d8 then. Can try to work some weakness, but I sort of feel inclined to play in the center. I don't know if I even want to mess with a4 too much. A4, A5 also invites knight C6 in some cases. Maybe just trying to swap down. Yeah, I think I'm going to focus on playing the center. I'm just going to go rook D1. Sort of a generic move, but it's going to be useful in a lot of cases. The rook could be handy elsewhere, as I was alluding to, but again, I don't want to spend too much time and just play some move that is ultimately equivalent to rook D1, evaluation-wise. But I could imagine a scenario where maybe I force through E5 somewhere, and it's good to have the rook on this on the D file, looking towards the D7 square. It might compel black to play rook D8 a lot of times to continue opposing me. Probably still working up to F4. Black plays A6. So do I go ahead and play A4? Just to stop B5. Completely put a stop to B5. Probably. It's probably what I want to do. And if I do play that, what will I do against knight C6? A4, knight C6. With the idea of perhaps trying to get in B5. Perhaps trying to force through B5. A4, knight C6, knight C2, B5. Maybe knight C4 even at that point. Looks interesting. I could also take once and then play knight E3, let's say. Black probably has good play there, though. So A4 would be my default move again. Maybe F4 if I want to try to get black to reveal where they're going to put their knight first. But I think they're going to play knight C6. So A4 feels a little more flexible in that regard. But I just want to have a plan against the knight C6 reply. A4, knight C6. Yeah, because knight C2 would be consistent, but I'm just not quite sure about B5. Maybe I should have thought about this more on the previous move. But I'm not 100% sure about B5 as a reply. This could have been an argument for keeping the rook on A1 if I wanted to have my rook opposite black's queen. It's a bit tricky. And there's other moves too I could play if I want to address B5. But A4 is certainly one of the more consistent ones. It's pretty direct, A4, knight C6. But it's annoying because like I've said, I don't necessarily want to trade knights. So stands to reason I would move my knight, but then I got to reckon with B5 if I do. Yeah, rook D1 could have been a slight mistake by me strategically. Maybe I rushed that decision. So do I go ahead and play F4, knight C6, and maybe take a different path at that point? Still doesn't solve the B5 issue, though, is the thing. Still have to reckon with B5. I mean, I could play the rook back to A1 after A4 knight C6, but that feels wrong if I have to do that. No doubt. Maybe I could play A4 knight C6, knight C2, B5, A takes B5, A takes B5, and then rook A1. That's a possibility. Hit the queen with tempo. Let's say queen B8, knight E3. Take on C4, take with the knight. Just feels like I'm going in the wrong direction, though, if I play that way. I get a pass B pawn, but that pawn could be weak, is the thing. So I'm not liking that direction. Yeah, I think rook D1 was a bit of an inaccuracy. I didn't realize A6, knight C6 could be forthcoming. I don't think I'm worse here or anything, but if I want to avoid a knight trade, it might be tough now. And also time is starting to become a thing. A4, knight C6, bishop F1. Allow a trade, but hold up B5. Kind of ugly. Little bit ugly. But also could make some sense with B4 being in the mix. Black can shut things down with A5. That's going to be tough. Yeah, this B5 operation, tricky. Do I go A4, knight C6, take? But then on bishop takes, what's my plan? You know? What's the big idea at that point? In queen D4? Just doesn't feel like much. Some cases I could try to get it past A pawn, but okay, let's go A4. I think I kind of have to play this move. But let's see if black goes knight C6. And just 2 moves ago, move 17, I was saying how much time we both have. And now I spent half my time trying to find a mini plan. Yeah, I think I should have kept my rook on A1. That's how subtle these positions can be, though, because the timing appears to work for black now. I don't know if they're going to go for this. Maybe they're thinking of some different thing. They might have just played A6 generically. But by how long I took to play A4, they're probably even more so going to look at B5 if they weren't already. Or sorry, knight C6 and trying to go B5 after a knight trade. Is there anything with knight F5 somewhere? This move always crossed my mind. Don't think it's ever really working, though. Then we're getting into fantasy land. How it can open the black king and try to checkmate. But that's not going to happen. I mean, black might play something patient here. They might put the rook on D8 or C8. I thought rook D1 might encourage that. But now I think black's going to be looking to try to simplify with knight C6, B5. So I'm trying to use my time right now while black is thinking to figure out any way I can keep the position sort of tenuous, keep some mystery in the position, and not allow B5 to just trade stuff off. Because there's a chance I could be worse if B5 goes off in a way that allows black to eventually target let's say, my weak b3 pawn. So that's why b5 is so compelling for black, this mini minority attack, using 2 pawns to attack 3. But it is predicated on that knight exchange first. So let's say knight c6, knight c2, b5, just most direct. A takes b5, A takes b5. Then let's say, do I want to throw rook a1 in? Not sure. Let's say I do throw rook a1 in. Rook a1, queen b8. Okay, and black plays knight d7, so I'm happy to see that because I really wasn't sure what I was going to do against knight c6. So knight d7, waiting and seeing. I mean, they can still try to line up b5 later. It's not like I'm definitively ruling that out. But in the short term, probably that's not happening. So I think f4 is the principled thing to do. Keep grabbing the space. Also connects my queen to the bishop. f4, and then maybe knight f6, queen d3 perhaps. Might be nice to double the rooks up quickly too. So I could also think about rook e3, rook e1. Rook e3, rook e1. Rook e3 is a nice multi-purpose move. Helps reinforce b3 as well. Kind of compelling. Rook e3, knight f6, rook e1. If knight g4, maybe rook c3, or rook e2 simply. Knight to e5. I mean, there's a roundabout way black's knight could get to c6 in theory. Seems kind of unlikely. So, all right, I'm getting a little low. So f4 or rook e3, what do I like? Rook e3 looking like the more flexible thing to do. Might even allow for queen e2 in some cases. Remember, queen h6 still met by rook h5. So we're probably not going to go for that. Yeah, let's go rook e3. Potential doubling. I mean, there's maybe a hint of some g4 rook h3 plan with this too, which is not at all why I played this rook e3 move, but at least black will have to consider it. So knight f6, rook e1. Moving my rook from d1 and then to e1. Maybe black could think about e6 and try to force through d5, but I somehow doubt that's going to be a good idea. It doesn't look right. Got to figure out how to slowly crawl forward, but I need more preparatory moves. If I could get black to start thinking, that'd be great too. But for now, I think the position remains a little too easy to play. Yep, knight f6. So rook e1 or queen e2? What do I like? Queen e2 adds a defender to b5 again. Probably don't need it, but that is sort of handy. Hints at e5. If I ever want to play e5. Otherwise, probably not a huge difference between some of these moves. I have to watch black playing e5, it must be said, but I think that's going to weaken d6 too much in the short term. So queen e2, rook e1. It's a really close call. I think both moves make sense. Let's go queen e2. So 1, 2, 3 defenders of the e4 square, 1, 2, 3 attackers. So black can't initiate the trade or the capture. They're going to lose a piece. So black's trying to figure out what to do with this knight. It does feel like they're trying to induce f4, which, again, I'm not necessarily opposed to playing at some point, but I'm still trying to coordinate as well. Still trying to make sure b5 doesn't get played at some inconvenient moments. Maybe hint at this e5 move again. Not quite ready to play that, but I could be at some stage. I do like that queen e2 covers b5 and also covers g4. So if I had played rook d to e1 instead, I think there's a chance black might have played knight g4 with tempo and then knight e5. It would seem weird to do that, but I really don't want that knight landing on c6 again. The big thing for me is just not getting to 3-4 minutes while black still has 10 plus, and the position is still tense, or growing even more tense. I need to keep pace on the clock. Yeah, I don't think this e6 d5 plan is ever going to be that great. I mean, maybe there's some case where black could pull it off, but it would require a lot of thought. They would have to consider various permutations of the captures on d5, permutations of me playing e5, the implications of creating an undefended knight on f6. So in other words, if I just kept my same setup and black got in e6 and d5, there's a lot for black to think about there. b4 thrown in somewhere, maybe after an initial trade with the c-pawn. It looks very risky, so I hope black burns time thinking about something like that, but I think they're mostly going to sit tight, continue doing what they're doing. My knight on d4 is annoying for black, for sure. But it's hard to kick away, because if ever you play e5, you weaken that d6 pawn. You create a backwards pawn on d6, and that's a huge responsibility if you take that on, because my rook on d1 is, for now, poised to attack that. Might be a reason not to play rook e1, by the way. I want to keep it that way. So my next move might be f4, if allowed. We'll see. Although f4, it must be said, if I play f4, that does give black more of a license to play e5. Because if they could trade one of the pawns in the center, that's a much better outcome. So I should keep that in mind. What else is relevant here? Maybe if rook c8, rook f to c8, I could consider bishop h3. Hitting the rook with the idea of rook c7 and then e5. Forcing through e5, which I know looks risky on that long diagonal. But that's an idea. So rook f c8, bishop h3, rook on c8 to c7, e5. Because black's queen and bishop in their current arrangement are not threatening checkmate. If they were flipped and the queen was leading, well, I'd be running into queen h1 mate. But even if they play bishop h1, they're not threatening queen g2 with my bishop sitting on h3. So that's interesting. Rook c8, bishop h3, rook a to c7, e5. Let's say d takes e5, rook takes e5. Wow, and black plays e5. The move I didn't think they would play. Okay, so I don't think I have a choice other than Knight c2. And this is, again, a moment like, what am I missing? I seem to just have good pressure against the d-pawn. I mean, is black going to try to tactically solve stuff? I don't think so. Are they going to try to force through d5? Ooh, no, that doesn't work. It doesn't remotely work. It might work if they were doubled on the c file. They might just play rook d8, but then let's say knight c2, rook d8, knight b4. I think I'm cool with this. Whoa. All right, well, let's not freeze up here. Knight c2 is the only move I'm thinking about, because if I play knight f3, black can take on e4. At minimum with the bishop, but probably the knight as well. So why does black want to give themselves the backward pawn? Because usually if you were to do this, you'd be wanting to play the pawn forward very quickly, but clearly that's not the case. Very unusual. Okay, so now is the game going to switch to attacking the pawn on d6? It looks like it. But I still have some logistical stuff to work out. And black still may be looking for b5, it must be said. So let's be aware of that. Do I start with knight b4, perhaps? To discourage b5 or d5 in any circumstance. Maybe play knight d3 as well. Because if black plays a5, that'd be kind of nice, I think. Then I wouldn't have to worry about a5 in the future. Black might try to direct their knight to d4, but it's 2 squares away diagonally from that square. So that's going to be hard for black to get it there in the short term. So yeah, knight b4 makes sense, I think, in this position. Also, if I want to switch to attacking the d-pawn, I need to tend to my e-pawn. So f3 makes a lot of sense, I think. Something about knight b4 appeals to me, though. And I do wonder if black's going to try to force the issue with b5. And let's say if there's a double capture, maybe queen a5 at the end. Could go knight e1, by the way. That's a thing. Could start with that f3 move. Getting a little low, but I like this turn of events for me. Could play knight a3 if I really want to try to rule out b5. I mean, knight b4, b5. Knight d3, let's say. Hit the rook. Rook c7, then I double capture. Would that really be good for black? I don't know. That doesn't look right. I have knight takes e5 too. So f3 or knight b4. f3, it feels like black might play something like queen a7. To try to introduce some tension. Then I might have to go queen f2 or something, but then b5. Somehow knight b4 feels correct here. I'm having a hard time describing why, but I'm going to go for it. And let's see if black sits tight or how they handle this. It's not so much I want to put the knight on d5. Like, that's the obvious thing with knight b4, but I probably don't want to do that yet because it's just going to lead to a bunch of exchanges and a general clogging of the center. So I'm more so playing this move to control certain key squares and maybe have the option of knight d3. And also it's nice that my knight isn't a liability on c2 in some cases where maybe black does play b5. Now, I'd be very pleased if black played a5. I think that's unlikely, but I'd be very pleased because I think then I can start maneuvering. And if I stop both b5 and d5, black should be in for a very long and unpleasant defense because they're not going to have a good pawn break. So I'm still principally not concerned, but occupied by the b5 pawn break. I have to constantly be thinking about the implications of that move. Again, maybe that's an argument for playing knight a3, but knight b4 just feels better. This could still get sharp, though, if black decides to play b5, but I just see some concrete issues, especially if I start with knight d3. So even if I take first, I don't know. Then again, black's been playing more directly than I've anticipated at pretty much every pivotal moment in these middle games, it seems to me. With the exception of maybe black didn't go knight c6. I thought they would play that move, but I definitely didn't think they would play e5. So how could this go if b5? Because knight d3 I thought was good, but maybe rook c to c8. We get a double capture and then queen a5. No, black's going to sit tight. Queen b8. Okay. Another move I kind of like to see, because doesn't that free up rook d3 now? If I want it. There's less pressure on my e4 pawn at this point. So rook d3, I think, has been freed up. But then b5, maybe b5. But then I could maybe take on b5 and then play a5. Which that could be nasty for black. I don't know that they want to allow that. Maybe, though. Maybe. If not rook d3, then what else? I don't know. Rook d3, b5. C takes b5, a takes b5, a5. And my knight on b4 is kind of useful there, jamming things up. Queen a7, let's say, a6. Is that pawn a strength or a weakness? Hard to say. e4 is still a little loose for me. I could play knight d3. Nah, I'm not seeing much there. Could start with f3, bishop f1 even. Bishop f1 might be a responsible move. Feels a little abstract, though. Knight d3. Maybe I should play f3 because I'm feeling like I need to play f3 at some point, you know? And I'm getting low. Let's do it. I'm going to go for it. Keep the knight on b4. Not hurry to attack d6. I mean, rook d3 wasn't even threatening to take on d6, so I think this is okay. I'm lower than I would like. And the position still could blow up at some point. But I do still feel good about my position. Okay, kind of a waiting move. King g7, useful. Maybe bishop f1 now. If black is content to wait, I probably have time to play some preparatory moves. Bishop f1. Yeah, let's do it. Rearrange a little bit. So black's digging in. And I'm just very concerned about this b5 move. Even if it loses a pawn, I just want to prevent it if at all possible. Or make black have to work extra hard to prove any sort of compensation if they're intent on playing b5. But it really doesn't look like they are, because they passed up not numerous, but they passed up, in my opinion, a pretty big opportunity to try to force b5 through with knight c6 after a6, a4. So is black now going to try to reroute their knight? Again, ideally, they'd like their knight sitting on e6, but that's going to take a while. Some cases, I might even sack an exchange against that. Okay, h5. Yeah, I mean, I think black's playing reasonable moves, but not ones that I should be unhappy to see. Still, though, let's keep this rolling. Knight d3. Maybe I could even play knight d3, maneuver to f2 in some cases. Or should I go knight a2 and try to go to c3? I mean, black's making some inroads on the king side. Maybe h4 takes, knight h5 is their plan. Probably is, actually. So it may not be an awful idea to play knight d3 first, and then knight f2. So rook d3 really doesn't do much for me. Could play h4. Not sure how I feel about h4. Does gain a grip on g5. Okay, I'm getting low, though. h4. Let's play h4. I have mixed feelings about this move, but I don't want to think about h5 as time starts to tick down. Or sorry, h4 by black. Probably would be fine to meet that with g4 even, but it creates a little bit of uncertainty for me. So let's create the bathtub structure. I'm really playing to restrict my opponent right now. But I'm still also trying to coordinate in the best way. And it's not simple how I can end up attacking the d6 pawn, getting, for example, 3 attackers on d6 without allowing b5. Rook c8, okay. Maybe now queen f2. Queen f2 feels decent here. Or yeah, let's go queen f2. Occupy this diagonal. Unveils the bishop towards b5. Maybe black has to think about b6 soon. Possible rook d3 on the next move. Now, if knight d7, maybe I sneak in bishop h3. Maybe. We're making progress. I think these last several moves have been constructive for me, while black maybe has played some constructive stuff themselves, but hard to see where they're going with it. So queen c7 makes sense. Knight c3 or just rook d3. Rook d3, there's still a chance black might play b5, I feel. I think I might want to go knight c3. Knight c3, knight d7, bishop h3. They could go for d5, though. If I'm not careful. That's a thing, too, in these positions. I have bishop h3, actually, if I want to throw that in. Bishop h3. Not sure I do, though. Ugh. Getting low. Let's coordinate rook d2. I don't know. I'm possibly seeing ghosts in this position, but I'm now noticing if b5 is played in some cases while I'm intent on rerouting my knight, black might get in d5, so I do got to respect d5. So this is more or less a waiting move. Just a waiting move. So if queen c5 hitting my knight, I can play knight d3 if I want. Yeah, I just played something that looked helpful. Get a piece on another defended square. But still trying to find the best way to coordinate. Queen c5, knight d3. Maybe queen c5, knight a2, but then b5, c takes b5, a takes b5, bishop takes b5, d5 is something I got to watch. Possibly I could take on d5, take on e5 there, but I don't know. That's the type of explosion when I'm down on the clock I might not want to allow. Potentially dangerous transformation. It may seem like I'm being overly cautious, but I just know from experience in these positions, they can blow up, open up real quick. Still, though, what's my next move if I get the chance? I mean, should I go rook e1, rook d1? That would be a funny way to justify the doubling. And keep the bishop able to observe b5, not have to play rook d3. It's a possibility. I do think it's important that if black goes knight d7, I play bishop h3, and I try to eliminate that knight before it routes itself. Black plays a5. Okay. Well, let's go knight a2. Yeah, this is the move I wanted to induce. It's so funny because Black's playing the moves in theory I think I'm happy to see, but it's still going to be tough. Knight c6. All right, so knight c3 just looks super obvious. And still on knight d7, I can play bishop h3. There's rook d3 as well. Let's start with knight c3. Route the knight. Mostly just control key squares. So, okay, b5 is off the table now, as is probably d5. So the consequence of Black playing a5 is now I don't have to think about those two pawn breaks. I think Black's just kind of battening down the hatches here and saying, yeah, my d6 pawn is weak. My b6 pawn is a little loose too, but I have lots of pieces that can come to the aid of those points. Your b3 pawn's a little weak, John. So I do feel pretty comfortable here still that I should be better, but we could have a long grind ahead from this point forward still. And I think a lot will be determined by whether Black can do something with this knight, especially if they can send the knight to c5. If they can send the knight to c5, I think they shouldn't have any problems, because that's always going to tie me down to b3. And maybe there's knight e6, d4. But given that I have this bishop h3 thing, I feel like I can make that plan difficult for them. But again, there's the direct move. And let's play bishop h3 right away. Could Black maybe have missed this? It's possible. But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they're thinking of playing for f5 sooner or later. But still, I think I'm happy to take this knight and play with bishop, Black's bishop versus my knight. Because now knight c5 is coming. So probably got to take if I want to stop that. Now maybe time for rook d3. How do I feel about f5 in reply? I mean, I feel like I can always take and then play knight d5 and kind of jam things up if I want. I could play knight d5 right away, but that looks premature. Yeah, let's go for rook d3. So there's still this one pawn break Black has, which is f5. They might play that at some point. He might go for that. Not right now, I don't think. I think Black's probably going to want to prepare it. It's a committal move for Black. It breaks up his king side. Okay, this has been very much a maneuvering game, but for me, from my perspective, the overarching theme has been Black playing pretty directly in this hedgehog formation and playing some moves that sometimes can get Black in strategic trouble. But it has yet to be settled whether I can quote unquote punish them for that. Again, I think I'm better here. I think there's almost no doubt of that. But the bishop is controlling where my knight can jump. Most of my advantage hinges on Black having two fairly weak pawns that I can target versus my somewhat more muted weaknesses, let's say. My pawns on the third rank. Those pawns are harder for Black to target. Whereas I'm pretty clearly pressuring d6, some pressure against b6 as well. The knight should be a little more flexible than the bishop, but for now, those pieces are canceling each other out. So maybe next I go queen e3, just to perhaps discourage f5, because my queen might land on g5 somewhere. Maybe I play rook d1 and try to triple up on the file, although it stands to reason black's going to be doing the same. Double up on the d file. Not really seeing where I can send my knight. That would be an improvement over the current square. Maybe I bring my king to the queen side. That would be funny, but also makes some sense. You see that sometimes in positions of this type. Get my king all the way over on b2. Yeah, so black, again, playing pretty directly, looking for f5. So we're probably going to see a showdown in the center. So how do I want to handle this? We got to assume f5 is the next move. Do I play knight d5 right now? Or do I play something like queen e3 first, as I was alluding to? Let's go queen e3. I'm going to play this. I want to get my queen off of the same file as the rook. And on f5, take, rook takes. I just kind of like that I can either put my knight on e4 or d5. I like having that optionality. What else might there be? I mean, if I don't take the pawn, then it's possible black will play f4, which I don't think I want to allow. So I do think I should take. Yeah, let's take. And now knight e4. And assuming black takes, do I take with the queen even? Knight e4, take with the queen. I still have some nice control there. So black still feels a little bit worse. And there's ways black could blunder that I see as well. Black has some pressure on f3. They're threatening the capture. I mean, f4 doesn't look right. Let's go knight e4. I mean, it might be nice to avoid a trade of my knight for their bishop, but I don't know that I can get around that at this point. I think black's bishop's gaining a little too much relevance if I avoid a trade. So knight e4, and I plan to take with the queen if black takes. And if I do that, I wonder if I'm actually threatening g4. Because there's some tactics where I might have queen takes e5 at the end. Takes and then take on d7. Seems a little far-fetched at the moment, but if we assume that the knight and the bishop are going to get traded, that's not so far-fetched. Probably not going to take with the pawn, so let's pre-move the queen capture. I would doubt if black wants to allow me to keep my knight on board, because not only am I threatening to take on d6, but also knight g5 might be possible, so I think they should take. Black still looks a little passive, but yeah, bishop takes e4, queen takes e4. For example, if black plays rook f6, I think they blunder queen takes e5 again. Offers a draw. Interesting. Well, I didn't even get a chance to react to that because I had a pre-move. That's one way to decline a draw, I guess. I can still try to milk this position. I know I'm down on the clock a little bit still, but I think black remains pretty passive. Queen check. Okay. So king g2. Let's play it. I mean, black just still looks a little loose. Like even the B pawn could be weak in some cases. It should still be easier for me to cover like F3 and G3 compared to black covering, F3 and B3 compared to black covering D6 and B6. I mean, I might be quite a bit better here, actually. But I don't want to get ahead of myself because I've been fighting the clock for the last 15 moves or so. My king is somewhat open, as is black's, but that could be relevant in perpetual type situations. So rook d5, that's my likely next move. I think black should sit tight with rook f7, rook on f5 to f7. Maybe they'll try to keep the rook on its current square, but seems like they're going to have to move it pretty soon. Rook f8. Okay, so this is where I think maybe black has... Nah, I guess probably not in the current position. So rook d5, are they going to go queen b4? Is that the plan? Well, let's find out. Yeah, because now there's clearly some potential issues with the capture on e5, like queen c7, just going to blunder, queen takes e5. And I win a very important pawn, and I probably just win that endgame. Yeah, okay, so this crossed my mind. It's an interesting move, because on rook takes e5, pawn takes, queen takes, black has rook takes d2, so I probably don't want to play that way. I might have rook b5 here. It looks like there should be a tactic, but I don't think there's a tactic, is the thing. So maybe some preparatory move? I don't have a ton of time to consider. Don't think I want to play with queen against two rooks in that situation. I think my king's a little bit too open. Rook b5 is interesting. Because on takes, I think black is bound to lose a pawn. So I might want to go for that. Yeah, let's do that. So the point is, if black trades, yeah, they saw what I was up to. Okay, so more maneuvering. What's my next maneuver? Queen e3, maybe? Try to force black to go passive. Queen e3, rook f2, though, perhaps. Let's repeat once, just to see. Gain a little time. And maybe rook d3 at that point, just strengthen things a bit. There's no rush. Now I'm threatening queen takes e5 again, by the way. Yeah, let's go here. Rook d3. Still not really threatening rook takes e5, I don't think. It's a little bit better if my rook doesn't get captured on d2, but still probably not threatening that. But at least black has to think about it.
Do I want to start bringing my king over? King f2. Try to bring the king to e2, perhaps. That could help, for sure. Even just defending my rook. So rook takes e5. Pawn takes, queen takes, rook takes d3, take on b6. Rook takes f3. It's sharp. I mean, there's queen b7. I just don't think I want to risk that when I don't have to. Yeah, I think I might want to get my king over. Hard to say how much of an improvement that is, but it looks at least handy. Let's play king f2. Still got to be scanning for tactics at all times in a position like this, no doubt. But I'm gradually pushing up the board. I've got great control of the 5th rank now, in particular. Mm-hmm. Let's play king e2. So keeping touch with all these points. Now, I'm torn where I want to put my king, because with queen still on board, my king is not going to be absolutely safe anywhere. And there is something to be said for at least staying in touch with my f-pawn. I think if I send my king all the way to the queen side, I would be doing so with the argument that I might push g4 or something at some point. But I'm not so sure about that. But for now, I just like defending the rook. So if black plays queen c6, which I think is exceedingly unlikely, they would blunder rook takes e5 again. But, I mean, maybe rook b5 is my next move. Maybe that's what I argue. I got to watch rook f4 in some cases, but that's not working yet for black. Boy, I haven't even touched my tea. I'm still working on the coffee. Tough game. Time is less of an issue now. We're both low, but we're in a maneuvering situation. Yeah, not as sharp. At least yet. I feel like this should be a technical win for me because of the weaknesses black has and just the board control that I enjoy. But black's going to put up stubborn defense. Yeah, now g5 is a thing. That's a very creative move, which I did not consider, but it makes sense. Queen g5, maybe? Try to shut that down. Or sorry, queen e3. Yeah, let's go queen e3. Just keep an eye on this square for now. Potentially allowing e4 in some cases, but I don't think that works for black. So maybe rook b5 is a move black has to consider at this point, because I am taking the b6 pawn of my sights. Yeah, that's one of those moves, g5. I don't know if that was even a threat technically, but I don't even want to entertain it. Black could try rook f5. But then, I don't know. Rook f5, maybe I start evacuating my king. King d1. If black keeps playing towards the king side, I might want to go queen side, ultimately. Okay, so now I'm up on the clock. Minor victory on that front. It's a tough balance for black because it's obviously unfortunate for them to have to just defend passively. So I think they're doing a pretty good job of at least giving me things to thinking about while dodging my ideas. But this can blow up on them. It can backfire on them too if they overextend or play some active looking move that just loses tactically. So thinking. Yeah, I think if I get a move, I think I'm probably going to go towards the king side with my king. King d1 or king d2 next. Yeah, rook f5, that makes sense. So is the queen coming to f6? Kind of seems like it. Could put my queen back on b4 on e4. I could also play rook b5. But I think I want to get my king out of here. Yeah, I'm going to play king d1. King d1, and if queen f6, probably king c2. Probably king c2. b6 is loose, but I don't want to lose f3. There's rook f7, but rook takes d6, rook takes f3. I didn't actually calculate all that, but it doesn't seem great for black. We'll see, I guess. e4, I can take with the pawn, I think. Should be good. King h7. Just a waiting move. I can take b6, but then take on f3. Don't think I want to allow that. Queen e4 feels like the move. Just continue trying to exercise some care. Yeah, let's do it. And I think black's going to want to move their king again because they're in alignment here. So if they want to play g5, they can't because they run into g4. So I think they'll move their king back to g7. And then what? Then what for me? King b1, just keep trying to move my king over. Queen f8. I think they really want rook f7. Rook b5, rook f7. Rook takes b6, rook takes f3. Rook takes, queen takes. Okay, yeah. Could I play f4 maybe? f4 takes, take f5, we trade queens, take. It's interesting. That's an intriguing move. Might want to try to force things with f4. Feels a bit wrong, though. But I got to hurry now, so let's play it. I don't know. This is committal. I don't know if I should have done this, but I feel like things are coming to a head now. My king is out of the danger zone, so maybe I can capitalize on this. So I'm thinking if pawn takes, I take on f5, possible queen trade. Whoa, doesn't that allow takes? Black can't take on f4 twice is the thing, because I have queen takes g6 at the end. Take. Yeah, this is what I mean, guys. The position opened up real quick. And again, I don't know if f4 was right, but I also don't think that was what black should have done in reply. I think they missed that they can't take on f4. They must have. Otherwise, I don't know why you would go for this. Okay, not an absolute disaster for black, but they lose that important pawn. And I'm breaking through. What's my next move? Rook takes b6 or rook d7. Got to be mindful of the queen coming in. So queen g7, okay. Now queen a1 could be a thing. Queen a1. So do I go queen d4 to try to rule that out? Or rook d4 even? Rook d4 might be the principal thing. Rook d4, and then we could get trades. Queen still comes in at the end, though. Tricky business here. Rook e3, queen a1. Boy, I don't know. Let's go rook d4. Prevent queen a1, try to defend f4. But I'm inviting two rooks for the queen. And black might take me up on that. Because they got that queen a1 move at the end. Yeah, this might be in some drawish territory if we do that. I'm not sure about this move, but I had to make a decision. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have invited this. Boy, so tough to say, though. So difficult. So queen a1, I think, is likely. Black can fork my rooks, but it's not going to do much. So can I run my king up the board? I mean, I'd love to engineer some sort of attack. Do I give a check first, maybe? Check first and then rook f6? Because usually you want your rooks coordinated in a situation like this. So I'm probably going to end up doing that versus, say, taking on b6. Rook d1. Rook d1, queen a2, king c3 kind of hides my king, actually. But maybe let's black swing over. Yeah, rook d1 might actually be decent. I don't like black's queen being in the underbelly of my position. So rook d1 would be at least a way to discourage black from... I don't know if I should take my rook off the 6th rank, though. I can try to play for checkmate, too. Okay, let's give a check. So king h6, rook d7, play for mate. Whoa, black goes to g8, really? I am surprised by that, he says for the 10th time this game. Man. All right, let's keep these rooks coordinated. I don't know, rook over here also made some sense, but I don't want the checks to result in me losing a rook when I can't calculate all this. All right, so here. Might be looking at running my king all the way up to the queen side somewhere. But black might go for my h4 pawn at some point, too. Surprised black went king g8, though. I think king h6 was kind of the principled thing to do, so to speak. Okay, let's repeat once. Just gain a little time. The old 2 rooks against the queen. Always tricky. So black can definitely try to win my h-pawn, which I think they should if I start moving my king up the board. But black's king is going to get weak in doing that. Feels like I have better chances there. Feels like I might be able to play for a win. But king d3, queen d1, king e4, queen takes c4 is also a consideration. Let's go king d3. King d2, queen b2 was similar, so I don't know. I mean, this is a good example of why it's nice to have the rooks coordinated. So do I care about black winning the b3 pawn? It's tough to say. It connects my pawns, but black's leaving their king open to the elements at the same time. So whose king is ultimately weaker? I don't know. Queen d1, king e4, queen takes b3, rook takes g6, king f7, rook d6 to f6, let's say, king e7, rook c6 maybe. Gonna be tough. Both sides could blunder this in a sharp scenario like that. I think black actually should go for the b pawn versus the h pawn. Yeah, so moment of truth. Do I play king e4? Really not sure. I mean, there's a chance black goes queen g4, but I got to assume queen takes b3. So king e4, queen takes b3. Rook takes g6. I mean, I could always just check, 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 check if I want, I suppose. Let's try it. Let's go for it. It's double-edged. I mean, I think I should still have a draw in hand, so to speak. But it's, you know, a situation where I wouldn't be shocked if either side blundered something coming up. Hopefully it won't be me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I have a draw if I want still with the rooks checking. I don't even have to move this d6 rook. Wow, king h7. So you want to kind of trap yourself in over there. So rook h6, rook takes h5 is obvious, so long as I don't lose a rook. Let's give it a check. I could lose a rook, though. Like king g7, rook takes h5, queen takes c4, rook d4, queen e2. It's a good example, actually, of what I'm talking about here. King f5? King f5, queen f3. Do I push their king a little further? And then rook c4? Again, draws on the table. Man, I can't shake the feeling that I can play this for a win. Rook check, king over, king f5, maybe? Nah, it's risky. King's gonna have to go for a walk. Let's check again. It's just hard to see a way I can play for a win that doesn't mess my coordination up in a big way. Rook g5, queen takes c4. Check again. I feel like I might have to take the draw. I'm just not confident if I continue avoiding it that I can play this for a win without blundering something. I mean, rook g6. All right, well, let's play rook g6 at least. Because I can still keep check, check, checking. This might change something. If it takes, queen takes c4, I just don't feel like I can shake the perpetual there. Because I'd have to cross over into my rook somehow. Let alone lose the... I mean, king f5 crosses my mind here. But queen f3 again. Because king g5, queen g4 is mate. Let's keep checking. And same thing, my rooks are just not quite in the scenario I want them. King d5, maybe? King d5, queen d3, though. King c6, queen takes c4. Rook g5. Yeah. I think I got to take a draw. I'm not seeing it. Again, I could maybe push for a win with this somehow, but there's no getting around the fact that my pieces are just loose. Yeah, I'm going to repeat. Offer a draw. There we have it. Yeah, good defense by Black. I think they came up with a nice counter-attacking scheme. Again, a lot of these moves surprised me, but I wasn't able to figure out how to capitalize, if it's even possible. Like, I thought for sure when rook f7 was played, rook takes d6, and Black couldn't take back on f4, that this would be bad. But queen g7 is really nice. That's a very nice move, because it stabilizes g6, it introduces king a1 as a theme, and it also threatens rook takes f4. So here's where I played rook d4 and agreed to go into this queen versus two rooks scenario. And even with Black playing a move that surprised me, king g8, I thought king h6 would be played. But even with that, I don't know that there was much I could do. Maybe the engine will point something out. We'll see. I think ideally I would have liked to keep control of this position more. But once I committed to bringing the king to c2, I don't know. Because it felt like with the path I had laid for myself, maybe the f-pawn was a problem. And M. de Verdier says, my position was pretty bad at some stage. A5 was probably bad. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess my webcam is blocking this. I can move it for a second. I'll put... Seemed like I had a really nice grip on the position. I have a feeling this whole plan with f4 isn't the greatest, even if there is some way I can play this later. But maybe I should have just kept my king over on f2, rook e3, rook d3, and try to grind the position more. But that said, I mean, full credit to my opponent for some really good and active defense. So, yeah, it did feel like Black was playing very straightforward and giving me some arguably unnecessary opportunities. But even with all that, it was still tough. So I do feel, though, that when I click to the analysis board, the engine's going to say +1.5, +2. I don't know that I missed any outright wins, but I think the engine's going to give me a fairly nice advantage. And I'll be really curious to see what the engine thinks about knight c6 here, followed by, if I move the knight, b5. That was a principal continuation I was examining. That caused me to burn a bunch of time.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not sure the King March was even good. I guess we're gonna find out. Maybe I'll tell him. I thought, uh, um, or play B5 if I move the knight away. Yeah, and thanks again for the game. So let's see. Let's click into the analysis board. See what we got here. Wow. When you zoom out and look at this, oh, I should probably block or unblock the pure stats. This looks like a really in control, grind where, yes, I did have an advantage, but this makes me feel a little bit better that it wasn't a huge spike up. So it looks like the type of in control game I wanted to play. But I can't shake the feeling that I maybe should be technically winning. We're going to find out in the middle game. Yeah, and thanks to everyone for watching. I'm not sure even at the end. I mean, the computer seems to think I'm better, but I'll be really curious to look into the complications there. I think I might keep the initial analysis a little lighter because I think these moves we played in the opening were more or less along the lines of my preparation. At least one line I thought could occur. So if I'm remembering right, M. de Verdier had this position previously and played knight bd7. Yep, and that's the case in 2 games. Oh, man, did I prepare the wrong color? No. Okay, good. It said M. de Verdier as white, but then I click as black, so they also play this as black. That would be hilarious if I just prepared with M. de Verdier as white clicked on the whole time. Okay, so maybe I did miss something, though, because I'll have to go back and check. I'm sure you guys are going to tell me. That's funny. That's been a thing. I have a tendency when I click this, it clicks to the other color. So maybe I didn't catch that. But it seems like this player plays this with either color, actually. So had I looked at this more closely, though, black has played 94 in 11 games, which I don't recall from my preparation. So yeah, this has all been played previously in his practice online here on Lichess. So maybe a little sloppy. Maybe I missed the color thing. I'll have to be more careful if so. So rook e1. Okay, the engine gives all these moves as being a little bit better for white, but nothing too unusual. Just a sliver of a pawn, quarter of a pawn, or whatever. So rook c8, and then I stepped off the file. Yeah, queen d2 felt reasonable. b5 is a concern, I would say. The computer doesn't seem to think so as much, but to me, it looks like it should be. So queen d2, rook c5, e4, because remember, rook c5 always allows black to meet queen h6 with rook h5. So that's what that move was about. Oh, interesting. Black could have tried b5 right at this moment. By the way, why did I even go through the trouble of microwaving the water when I didn't drink any of my tea whatsoever? I might have taken 1 sip from this tea, but that's it. Oh, not good anymore. Just lukewarm lemon gingery water. Okay, there's much worse things, but it's not hot lemon ginger tea. So knight e5, knight d4. Yeah, so it's so interesting how you can play a game that was objectively pretty equal for quite a while, and both you and your opponent can have a completely different take on certain moves and turning points. There were probably a good, I'd say almost half dozen moves in this game that I felt black should not have played. Not that they were blunders, but they were strategically accommodating moves. Yet I wasn't able to set black huge problems. Maybe later once we get into that heavy piece ending, but it was still largely okay for black.
Yeah, so here, this is where I was thinking maybe I messed up with rook d1. But the computer isn't even rating knight c6. So what's the deal with knight c6? Knight c2. So if b5, is this just bad for some reason? Take, b4, and then try to quickly play a5? Oh, even take on b5. Ah, okay. So maybe that's what he was thinking. I move my knight, and then maybe concretely he wasn't able to make b5 work. Yeah, b4. I think I missed this b4 move, in between move before addressing the tension. Rook c4 and then take. Because I was worried about some transformation where these pawns might become weak. But the computer says no, this is fine. Interesting. So it says what he did is better. Knight d7. Rook e3. Yeah, I was a little low on the clock here. I wasn't happy about my time usage with really starting with rook d1 and then especially a4. I spent, what, 6 minutes on a4? A move I more or less have to play. Yeah, e5. Not on the top 5 moves, but doesn't move the evaluation that much. But generally, White's pretty happy to see that. Because it hits this pawn, it just creates this permanent weakness in Black's position. So rook d8. Okay. Yeah, it wants me to maybe think about playing knight a3 to control b5. And then f3, start doubling up. White's definitely better if I can control the d5 and b5 breaks, but it's going to be a grind. So knight b4, queen b8. It's also giving king g7, h5. Ooh, so Black could play b5 here. Yeah, this was a move I was paranoid about in the game. Because from experience, in these positions, Black can often open the position at an inconvenient moment for White, while White is caught maneuvering and trying to keep control. This looks rather specific, though. Queen a7, I guess threatening rook takes b5 because of the alignment here. Rook e1 to further reinforce, and then queen a5. Yeah, stuff like this crossed my mind. Maybe not in this exact order. But I felt like I was getting already pretty low at this point. But yeah, it looks like bishop f1 is a bit more accurate here, which I did play on the next move. But this probably rules out b5 more so because, yeah, I don't weaken my king for one thing. I keep e4 guarded. And the bishop pointing at b5 is helpful in most every case. So maybe I got my move order wrong there. Should have started with bishop f1. But Black didn't play for b5. So I was happy to get this in. h4, yeah, h4 felt like a perhaps micro error in this position. But again, with the clock ticking down, I didn't want to have to entertain h4, knight h5, Black gripping onto the king side and trying to create some inroads. But I'm not surprised that the computer maybe doesn't like h4. Maybe it doesn't matter too much. What about b5 here? Yeah, this is another instance where Black could think about this and then d5. Bust open the center. I think I mentioned this line. This might have been an unpleasant transformation given the time difference. Rook takes or bishop takes, whatever. Because, yeah, I see the engine eval, White is better, but White is still up a pawn. But the pawns are doubled, the position's opening up. That's maybe what Black should have done with my clock quite a bit lower than his. Easy to say in hindsight, though, because you're mostly thinking about maneuvering here and trying to be safe if you're Black. But yeah, really good example of where Black can try to break out. So queen f2, again, just trying to prepare for some inevitable b5 sequence. The computer thinks Black can still do this. Even with me taking with the bishop, Black can still go for this to unleash play. Huh. Yeah, look at this line. Rook takes d5, play with the knight at the end. And my king is open. My king is exposed when everything is said and done. Yes, I have 2 connected pawns on the queen side, but I don't doubt that Black's going to have compensation and play towards my king. Some line like this, let's say. Yeah. It was a little touch and go there. I really only relaxed when black played a5, and especially when I was able to trade the bishop for a knight. So I think my opponent's comment after the game is right. a5, again, a move that hardly moves the evaluation for the computer, hardly moves the needle, but it doesn't feel in the spirit of the position because you just take away both of the breaks. d5 is impossible to justify now, really, because they can never deflect my c-pawn. They kind of need b5 to deflect the c-pawn at some point, and only then d5. Or b5 as a means of opening it up on the queen side and gaining counterplay on that wing. I mean, despite all this, white's only a little bit better if black doesn't play for b5. So knight a2. So this is the big question. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about this. But I felt like bishop h3 was absolutely right. So much so that I think if I were playing black, I might have played something like rook b8 first, so that if knight d7, they wouldn't be pinned. I could still play bishop h3 here, but then maybe at some point black plays bishop d7. It's unclear what I'm doing next. Yeah, because I was happy with this transformation. Now I felt like I had locked down all of the black breaks, except for f5, as it turns out. Actually wants me to play knight d5 right away. Okay, yeah, that's possible. I just always felt like I didn't have to rush knight d5. But what's the difference here? Can I arrange pressure against the e5 point more easily if this happens? Maybe it's similar to the game in some ways. Maybe I'm a little better positioned to attack that pawn on b6 or something. So rook d3. So it looks like this was a engine-approved plan. Good plan by black. It kind of makes sense. It's probably the only active thing black can really do here. So f5 take, rook takes. Knight e4 felt correct. Black's threatening rook takes f3. Yep, take with the queen. Don't really want to take with the pawn because that prevents me from accessing the e-pawn in some cases with queen takes e5 or rook takes e5 as a threat. Also opens the f-file, creates an isolated pawn for me. Yeah, maybe my advantage was less than I thought. I think that's what we're seeing here. I would have thought this was more in the plus 1.5 range, but the computer only says plus a half pawn or so. And this type of stuff is not quite working. It's the type of tactic you got to look at, but ironically, this is like the reverse of the game where black has the two rooks against the queen. And I was a little hesitant to go for this when it felt like black's rooks were coordinating pretty well. And indeed, the computer thinks this is level. So rook b5, because I was thinking if takes, black's bound to lose a pawn now. If they play rook b8, I take on e5. So I was always trying to get to some scenario like this where I was winning a pawn and probably winning the game. If I were playing a lower rated player, this type of thing could have easily happened. But this is a strong player who's aware of the tactics. We're looking at largely the same stuff tactically. And I never really saw a good moment where they slipped and let me have something compelling. So the computer has not yet indicated where I maybe had something serious. It's giving rook b5 again. Rook b5 at this moment, huh? And what if queen c7? Now queen e3. Uh-huh. At a moment where black can't play rook b8. Oh, okay. But still, rook c7 is a defense. Then I could trade queens and try to grind out a win here. Still not easy, though. Still not easy. Rook e3, try to bring my king up. Try to play f4 somewhere. Yeah, better for white. I'd be curious if this was strictly winning. But it probably was something specific like that, at least at this stage, something where I abruptly pivot to attacking the b-pawn at an inconvenient moment for black. Rook 5 to d4 is another move it gives. Different way of offering a queen trade. And this also isn't... This is another permutation of the two rooks for the queen. This is a better version than the last one because black doesn't take with check, but it actually doesn't change the evaluation. Yeah, I thought something like this. Very similar to the game, just reversed. Even queen b7 check forks the king and the rook, but black has rook f7. Didn't feel like I could win here. Might even risk losing sometimes. So, yeah, I start moving the king over, sort of vaguely to escape anything black had planned with g5, or maybe later justify playing on the king side myself. But I don't know. I don't think this maneuver is really that great. I think what the engine was saying with the rook b5 continuation, I think that's more along the lines of what I should be doing, trying to engineer some scenario like this. But whether it's strictly going to work for me, I'm doubtful. Doesn't look like that's the case. Oh yeah, let me change to Stockfish 17, because some of you guys have been chastising me for using Stockfish 16. All right. It'd be funny if I switched to Stockfish 17 and then it was like, oh yeah, you're easily winning. This is game over. How could you not have won this game? Okay, queen d8. Yeah, this is very creative, putting the queen behind the rooks. It makes sense in hindsight, but I really didn't consider it during the game. Now, why did I go queen e3 here? I think I was worried about g5. Yeah, I was definitely not wanting to entertain g5, but let's say I go king d1. Is this even good for black? Not because it takes, though. It wants me to just continue doing what I'm doing. And if takes, f4. Okay, that would have been tough. G takes h4, maybe I could have somehow found. Yeah, because if ever I could engineer this, if black's rook leaves the defense of the rook on d7, I was trying to engineer some scenario like this. Even this, I don't know if this is winning, but there were various versions of that. But I don't know, I got to give myself some grace, because at this point in the game, if we scroll down a little bit, I've got a minute and a half. Black has a little more time than me, but hardly anything. I think black did a really good job of finding active defense after this. So rook f5 is apparently a mistake. Now this is probably the greatest advantage I've had in the game. But man, it still felt complicated. Rook b5, what was I worried about? I don't recall. Maybe... yeah, maybe something like this. I definitely don't remember referencing this line specifically. But this could get open and messy. I'm not shocked, though, that the eval spikes up, though, once we get into this stage of the game. I'm surprised I didn't have a greater advantage before this, but now I'm not as shocked that there might have been something at this point in the game. So king d1, okay. King c2. This maneuver seemed helpful. Get my king a little more to safety. King h7. I thought black was sputtering out here a little bit. Queen e4. But then queen f8, really well played. Queen f8, preparing rook f7. That was smart. Or at least it seemed to me in the game. And then I went for f4, and that is an error, according to the engine. I get an inaccuracy on that one. So if I play king b1, and I continue trying to hide the king, which might in theory be helpful later if the game does open up, like black might not have that queen a1 move, for instance, way down the line. What was I concerned about? I mean, I guess the obvious thing I'm concerned about is this. But like the game, black can't play rook takes f3, or they can't move their rook from f5 without allowing queen takes g6. Wow, and this is a better version because black isn't in a position to play e4 either. And I'm guarding f3 a little more sturdily. Yeah, this is a better version. So I probably shouldn't have rushed it with f4. I think if I were to have one move back in this game, it probably would be f4. Even when I played it, I think I commented that this felt rushed. But there was something about queen f8 that caused me to feel like I had to push the pace. I don't know if it was seeing that rook f7 was now a thing, or maybe I thought queen c8, but that doesn't make much sense. Yeah, this is probably the high water mark of my position, I'm guessing.
somewhere roundabout here. So king b1. Let's just say that black waits. I'm curious what the winning plan is. Let's say king a2 even. Rook d7. The winning plan might be to go take that pawn. It's going to get messy, though. It's going to get messy at some stage. Even if the computer says +3. Still rook f2. But if I had completed the king maneuver to the A file, I do think that gives me better chances. Yeah, you know what? I think I saw rook f7 was black's plan at this point. And thought I had to force the tempo, or that it would be a good idea to force the tempo. With f4, maybe take advantage of the alignment with their king too. But that was impatient. Yeah, I think that was a clear moment where I let things slip. The computer's clearly suggesting king moves, especially getting the king over to a2. The queen on e4 is really nice. So keeping the queen there makes sense. Now, interesting, after rook f7, I'm still better. But let's see, rook takes d6, e takes f4, g takes f4, and very nice, queen g7, because again, rook takes f4, runs into queen takes g6. Black can't allow that. So queen g7, and now the question is, how do I deal with the threat of not only rook takes f4, but also queen a1? The computer's suggesting rook g3. Funnily enough, I think I looked at some version of that. Did I look at this move here? Maybe. I might have dismissed it out of hand, though, because of queen a1. The computer has no fear. How do I escape these checks? Queen c2 at some point. Okay, and I guess the endgame is winning for me. Here, and then take. And I can always block with my rook. I'm up 2 pawns. Not simple, though. Not simple. Rook g3. Yeah, that's probably a move I could find. I would definitely consider in a longer game. But in the moment, I thought, all right, I should block queen a1. Even this, though, rook g3, rook 7 to f6 is not easy. Black's down a pawn, but my king's still open. The f pawn's a little weak. The h pawn's weak. So rook d4. I also thought about queen d4 to offer a rook ending. What was I considering here? Because there's 2 ways black can go into it. They can take on d4 first, or they can just take f4 first. I think I wasn't sure about this permutation. Maybe dynamically equal. But black has the 2 connected pawns. I got the c pawn. Yeah, this looks a little unclear to me. Maybe dangerous even, because I can't easily connect my pawns. And if black's g and h pawns get some momentum, I could be in trouble. So rook 3 to d4. Rook takes f4, absolutely. I don't think black should delay that decision. Doesn't seem like there's any point. And now queen a1. Yep, there's other moves too, apparently. Queen e5, but queen a1 is totally human. So rook... Oh, I played rook f7. What does it want me to do here? Rook d1. Now, that's a move I mentioned. Rook d1 to try to contain the queen. At least keep b3 defended. What did I not like about this? I don't remember. Maybe it was just allowing something along these lines. But I can keep h4 safe. I can keep the b pawn safe. Maybe I can slowly make progress from here. The computer says, yeah, you're quite a bit better. This would still be very tough, don't get me wrong. But maybe rook d1, strictly speaking, was the thing to do. Queen a2, king c3. Yeah, queen a3 also makes sense. Trying to stay annoying on the queen side. But it feels like I can always hide the king in this line. So I went for the more active thing. Rook f7. Now, I really thought king h6 would be played. The computer says no difference between king h6 and the move that black played, king g8. That's funny. Yeah, so on king h6, I probably would have played rook f6 to connect the rooks, threaten g6. And this might have been similar. This might have been similar to the game. King d3. Could I play this for a win somehow in this permutation? Nah, this actually transposes to the game, doesn't it? Yeah, so I guess we'll see coming up if I could have done anything with this position. So repeat, that's always a good thing to do when you're trying to gain a little bit of time. Check, looks fine. King e4. Yeah, and black, I think, absolutely took the right pawn, which leaves me with weak pawns. All my remaining pawns are weak, undefended. And black's pawns are loose too. I can collect one or two of them. But the main thing here is that my king is always exposed. And when you're fighting against a queen, and specifically when it's a queen versus two rooks, the side with the queen usually wants ample checking opportunities against the enemy king. Okay? And the side with the rooks really wants the rooks coordinated and also checking opportunities if possible, but especially rook coordination. So I feel like we kind of both have things that we want out of this imbalance. My rooks are connected and threatening pawns, restricting black's king, creating mating nets sometimes. But black has done the right thing too in unleashing their queen towards my king and setting themselves up for further checking, further perpetual opportunities. Yeah, so I think this is the right call. Yeah, and I thought king f7 here, computer does find a difference, but I bet it's going to be something subtle. Okay, so I did this, rook dg6. So what's the way to play this for a win if I really want to play for a win? King d5. Oof. King d5. Defend the pawn on c4. Man. So this allows queen d3? How is this going to go? Wow, queen d3, black loses. King c6, take. King b7. Oh my. Not king takes b6, which allows checks. So hide the king on b7. Oh, wow. And then I actually hide behind the black pawns. And then I can do something just to show this. Like, let's say queen takes c6 or queen takes a4. Rook c6. Oh, my. And it looks like black's king is in a mating net. Whoa. Just to show this. So let's say take rook c7. We got the lawnmower situation going on. So king g8 to guard against rook h8. And then like this, even this looks a little tricky when I'm not threatening rook d8. So what do I do next? King b8? Oh, rook d to d7. Okay, that makes sense because then rook c8 is a threat. Wow. You know, that crossed my mind that maybe there was some way I could get into the belly of the black position, but actually hiding behind the black pawns, that's very clever. King d5 precisely in this moment. It's a scary move to play, though. It allows queen d3. It also allows queen takes a4, which looks like a better defense. Now, note that check. Black can't play queen takes g6 because then after the trade, I'll be promoting the c pawn real quick. So, yeah, I was thinking about some ways my king could maybe breach the fourth rank and hide somewhere or assist in the rooks maybe more accurately, creating a mating net. But I definitely didn't think about a very study-like continuation such as this, where you don't even take the b pawn. In hindsight, it makes a lot of sense. I have seen themes like this in games and studies, but that's really tough, and it objectively looks risky. Because if I play king d5, black might even see what I'm up to, trying to go for king c6, so I could see them playing queen takes a4, and there's probably going to be some very precise sequence from here. Like, how does it want me to play this? Like this, and then rook takes b6. Okay, and maybe now the c4 pawn is a danger. This is another winning continuation, but it's messy. There's a lot of checks here. This is very, very messy. King c6, what if check? King b5, defend. Yeah. So king d5 was the chance to play for the win. And it likes king f8 a little bit better.
maybe for that reason. What's the difference of king d5? King d5, now queen d3. Oh, is it because black can check on f7? So if I hide the king, now black checks here, which previously in the other line, the king was occupying that square. Wow. So black needs to force white to take the pawns and then start giving checks. And white's king is more exposed. That is subtle. That is subtle. So that's why it wants him to play king f8 here instead of king f7. Although I don't know. King f7, king d5. There's queen takes a4. There's also b5. What is that move? Oh my. And that maintains the dynamic equality? No way. A takes b5, a4. Try to sprint with the a pawn. Using the pin on the c pawn. And this is a draw. I think there's no way we would both find this stuff. This suddenly looks scary for black. But the computer has no fear. Because it looks like my king now has protection, and maybe I can move the rook over and start giving some mating nets or setting some up. But yeah, no fear from the engine. Tricky, tricky business, folks. So I felt it was prudent to take the draw. I was also getting behind on the clock at this point. Black was playing very quickly, building up time. I was exhausting my free checks that I could give. Maybe I should have played those faster, but I knew this was subtle if I was going to play it for a win. I knew it would require some flourish. But I don't think I was particularly close to finding this idea. That would have taken quite a bit of time, like in a classical game, to find. So I'm okay with that. Yeah, as I mentioned, I was thinking about stuff like king f5 to help protect the rook on g6 and set up rook h7. Apparently, even this is not winning, but what I was worried about was black checking on f3, because I saw I couldn't play king g5 because of queen g4 mate. I'm all smothered here. Ironically, that might allow something like that other line where the king can eventually try to hide over on b7. But again, that wasn't on my radar. Oh, and you can see in the notation here, the computer indicates when you've repeated. Yeah. So draw. So, hey, I think this was a very well-played game by both sides. Really kudos to my opponent for his creative defense and active defense, too, because a lot of players would have collapsed in that heavy piece endgame or middle game once the bishop got traded for the knight. I think my opponent's comment after the game was spot on. I think a5 was the wrong decision because it saps a lot of the dynamic potential that black has with the b5 and d5 breaks. But very good defense after that. I mean, I thought I got the grindy type position that I'm usually pretty good at handling. But this was subtle. There were moments that were very hard to appreciate. I don't know if impatient is the right word for f4. I called that move impatient, but I was a little fearful of rook f7. I started seeing ghosts a little bit, and that can happen when you're low on the clock. But hey, by and large, I mean, 94% accuracy, and even beyond that number, which means something, but also doesn't tell the full story most of the time. The ways in which I could have capitalized were rather hard to appreciate, especially towards the end with the rooks against the queen. So I think my best chances were in the middle game, probably to complete this plan that I embarked on with getting the king over to the queen side. That safeguards my king when the position later opens up. Yeah, black probably would have tried something to counterattack, but hey, it's not easy to win chess games at this level. That's probably how I had to try to win this chess game, was continue with the plan and just endure any e4 or pressure against f3 type of stuff when it's not really working for black yet. Also endure g5, which doesn't also seem to work. So agreed with my opponent here. Impressive hold. I think that was the story of this game. Okay, let me know what you guys think about this one. A competitive game, probably the most competitive balanced game, let's say, that I played so far in the league against a FIDE master. So nice to play a title player. So with this draw, I'm going to have a chance to, I assume, play for first place in the final round. There is one game affecting who's going to be in the absolute pole position going into round 11, the final round of this season. And hey, maybe I'll play
road to beating Finns. You never know. We'll see tomorrow, as at the time of recording, when that game is played. So, all right. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Really appreciate it. I mentioned that the watch time has been phenomenal for these videos. Thank you for sticking around for the analysis too. Chess is such a rich game. There's so much to explore. And that curiosity when you try to draw some conclusions yourself, and that anticipation when you click and see what the computer is going to say about the game. It's like a mini Christmas Day or something sometimes. Unless you lose, and then it feels like you lost your job or something, and you're checking to see if the check came through. All right, so thanks again, and I'll see you guys next week for the conclusion to season 37 of the Lone Wolf League. We'll give it our all. All right, see you guys.